This is KGW News at 5.
He's in just like freezing conditions, no food, no water. He's wet, and there's a mountain lion circling around. So the odds weren't really in his favor.
This week, rescuers in Clackamas County braved treacherous conditions to help save a man solo climbing on Mount Hood. That's our top story this evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm John Adams. Although he was an experienced climber, the weather rapidly fell apart, causing him to lose his way. Alma McCarty shares the details of that mission.
The weather and the conditions change on these mountains all the time, especially higher up. So what looks like a bluebird day can quickly turn into a storm.
Stephen Sheberl with Clackamas County Search and Rescue says a 45-year-old experienced climber visiting from Mexico found himself dealing with just that as he made his way back down Mount Hood on February 4th.
Weather came in and he hit whiteout conditions, couldn't see anything, pulled out his GPS to navigate, which is the right thing to do. But the wind was so strong, it blew the GPS out of his hands. So he had no idea where he was going, and he just continues down the mountain, completely going to the west instead of south back to Timberline, and he just goes down and down and down until he finds himself in probably the worst place you could find yourself in these conditions, which is the bottom of Zigzag Canyon.
He says the climber lost his way mid-morning and after many hours called 911. Rescue teams suited up and headed out around 1 a.m. on February 5th, dealing with low visibility, high winds, and below freezing temperatures on their mission to find him.
We're kind of slipping and sliding, get down to the Zigzag River, find a way to cross it, and sure enough, the guy's right there, right where his ping had been showing up.
Stephen explains the timing worked out.
He's in just like freezing conditions, no food, no water. He's wet, and there's a mountain lion circling around. So the odds weren't really in his favor. So it was good that we got to him quickly.
Despite a language barrier, the three set off on what would become another 6 hours of trekking across ice and snow to finally reach safety.
It was quite an adventure. Very happy that my teammate Grant Sutton and I were able to make it to him, and were able to clear those first obstacles so that we didn't have to draw this thing out for multiple days, and we're able to get him out on time.
Alma McCarty, KGW News.
I'm glad he made it out of there alive. Turning now to weather for folks in the Portland area. Beautiful day today, Joe.
Yeah, second week in a row. John, we've been looking at these gorgeous conditions from the Coast Valley and the mountains. I'll show you the mountains here in a little bit, but right now along the beaches, we're seeing temperatures in the mid-50s for mid-February practically, with dry conditions and really mild conditions. I think a lot of people are going to take it. And speaking of that, we are seeing a lot of people enjoying the last 45 minutes or so of daylight, really less than that. As we go from the coast into the valley, we're seeing a temperature of 47 degrees at this hour at the reserve in Aloha. Great conditions to spend some time outdoors. And as we look toward the West Hills, the sun's starting to set a little bit. Temperature of 52 degrees. I'm expecting to see, at least temperature-wise, more of the same heading into tomorrow. If you're wondering, man, we're looking at 2 weekends in a row, like I said, with beautiful conditions. Does that mean we're done with any winter event in the valley? I'm not ready to say that just yet, but what I can tell you is there's no major cold Arctic outbreak over the next 7 days or so. So the snow showers are going to be staying up in the higher elevations. And speaking of showers, a few showers early tomorrow morning. So if you're making your plans for a Super Bowl Sunday, the heaviest amount of rain is going to be falling throughout the morning hours with drier conditions, mainly drier conditions, I should say, by the afternoon. We have that ridge of high pressure in place. It's going to push off to the east. This is that weak disturbance that arrives late tonight and into tomorrow, bringing in those showers for your Sunday morning. But heading in my detailed forecast, John, I'll talk about the extended forecast and just get ready for more of the same. Talk about that in just a few minutes.
All right, Joe, thank you. Portland's Transportation Bureau is strapped for cash with a $32 million deficit. They say if they don't bring in revenue now, they may have to lay off 118 city employees. Now, this week, they announced a plan to stay afloat. Sydney Dorner has the story.
PBOT admits to being lax about collecting revenue in the past. They say hiring 28 parking officers to ticket expired tags and parking meters could bring in millions. Portland's Transportation Bureau is facing a $32 million deficit. They plan to get 1/3 of that money by hiking up the cost to register and park your car. Liliana Horta parks downtown twice a week.
Just that increase would be a little discouraging to stop and shop, and I would rather do it out in somewhere else where I can park and not be charged that extra fee.
At a budget session this week, PBOT laid out a plan to get the $32 million shortfall down to $4.6 million. They want to hire 28 new parking officers, some to patrol for expired registrations, the rest for patrolling parking meters.
It would be a very important and less than painful pinch point for people than I believe is anticipated or expected. In fact, what we learned is that most people don't know how much they pay for parking.
PBOT says tackling parking infractions could bring in $5.5 million in just the next year. Also planning to stick drivers with a credit card fee on parking meters, causing a 20-cent jump. Mayor Wheeler expressed concerns about raising the cost to park.
At the household level, people definitely take that into account, and we can agree to disagree. But the reality is Portland is becoming a very expensive place to live.
Feeling like many Portlanders can't afford to live here with rising taxes and higher rents.
And it's not just because of property taxes. And we know this because we've measured it. It has to do with taxes, has to do with fees, has to do with the cost of rent, has to do with the cost of housing.
PBOT has until February 16th to submit their final budget request. Mayor Wheeler and City Council will approve the fiscal budget this summer. Sydney Dorner, KGW News.
One person is dead and 3 others are hurt after a crash on Southwest Nadeau Parkway in downtown Portland. Around 2:50 this morning, police responded to the crash at the intersection of Southwest Nadeau Parkway and Southwest Columbia. 2 vehicles were involved and police found 4 occupants of the vehicle injured, including one who suffered life-threatening injuries. Police say the driver, 46-year-old Jacob Tabor, was involved in another crash, sped off, and then collided with the second vehicle in this case. He faces DUI and assault charges. Portland police are investigating a shooting on I-84 that sent 2 teens to the hospital. Officers responded around 10 p.m. on Friday and found a 17-year-old girl and a 15-year-old boy who had been shot. Police say 2 teens were in a car when someone from another vehicle shot at them. Investigators do not believe it was a random shooting. So far, no arrests have been made. Well, a mother is pleading for help to find the man accused of assaulting her and her 2 children. Police are calling the attack a bias crime. Back on December the 29th, Kanika Collier was at work near Southwest 27th and Burnside. She let her kids, a 16-year-old daughter and then 11-year-old son, walk to Starbucks to get a snack. Soon after that, they called her frantic about this man.
Yelled that he hates their kind and wish they would die, and he spit on my daughter. Once your life is shaken like that, how do you put the pieces back together? It makes me angry because this isn't what we should be having to deal with in 2024. I'm sorry, just shouldn't.
Kanika ran out to help her kids. That's when she says the man took a cup of unknown liquid and threw it on them. She is in touch with detectives about the case. They're asking anyone who recognizes this man to call police. A man has pleaded guilty in a hate crime attack on a black food truck owner. Daniel Warren admitted to bias crime and assault charges. In June of last year, Warren yelled racial slurs and attacked Darrell Preston, who owns Laurel's Chicken Shack. Warren ran off but was arrested about 3 weeks later. He'll be sentenced later this month. A ceremony in Tigard honored a couple and an off-duty firefighter who worked together to save the life of a jogger. Last September, the couple spotted Amy Volman, who had gone into cardiac arrest while running. They realized she was unconscious and they called 911. That generated an automatic alert on an app called Pulse Point, which alerts folks who are nearby and CPR trained to respond. Turns off an off-duty firefighter got the alert and he helped the couple perform CPR.
I just, kept doing those chest compressions as fast and as hard as I could. And as I was doing so, I could hear the sirens and that help was coming.
Today, I'm humbled by the people and the organizations that are devoted to emergency response. I know without a doubt that I would not be alive today if it were not for the critical people and the tools that seemingly miraculously lined up in this chain of events.
Volman, who was later diagnosed with a rare heart defect, has now recovered. She says she will always be grateful for the people who saved her life.